In the emergency room, chaos erupts when paramedics rush in with a pregnant woman, her neck torn and bleeding. Doctors believe some wild animal attacked her on the streets. Before they can fully stabilize her, contractions begin. The team scrambles, performing an emergency C-section, and a healthy baby boy enters the world while his mother fights for her life. Years later, the story jumps to a new scene. A young couple arrives for what looks like an underground party, but instead of a nightclub, they step into a massive industrial freezer, its ceiling lined with hanging carcasses. A security guard blocks the far door until the young woman leans in and kisses her date with sudden intensity. Only then are they allowed inside. Music pounds against the metal walls as they enter the main hall. Neon lights flash, and the boy quickly loses sight of his partner in the crowd. When he finally spots her, a nearby dancer shoves him hard, and confusion hits. Around him, strangers stare with sharp, unfriendly eyes. From the ceiling, a strange red liquid drips onto his hand. In an instant, the sprinklers activate, drenching the dance floor. But this is no water, it's blood. Partygoers erupt in cheers, arms raised to the rain of crimson. The boy stumbles in terror, slipping on the sticky floor as laughter and music merge into a nightmare. Crawling toward the exit, he takes kicks and blows from the ecstatic crowd. Suddenly, his hands meet a heavy boot. He looks up to see a dark figure, Blade, the vampire hunter. Blood stops raining, and the revelers hesitate, sensing the shift. Then the slaughter begins. Blade moves with deadly precision, using his shotgun, submachine gun, and wooden stakes to tear through the panicked vampires. Security stands no chance as the crowd scatters in fear. The last desperate cluster of bloodsuckers tries to hold him off. Blade switches to his sword, slicing them down one by one. Only the vampire leader remains. The hunter pins him to the wall with silver stakes, then sets him ablaze. By the time police arrive, all that's left is a burning corpse and one traumatized survivor trembling on the blood-soaked floor. Blade has already vanished into the night. The charred vampire body is taken to the hospital for examination. In the morgue, doctors begin the autopsy. Unaware of the danger, the corpse suddenly twitches, then rises, attacking a male orderly first, then lunging for the female doctor who came to study the strange blood sample. She tries to escape, but fails, and his fangs sink into her neck. The hallway erupts with movement as Blade appears and severs the vampire's arm in one clean strike. Snarling, the creature leaps through a hospital window and disappears into the night. Blade turns to the bitten doctor, raising his weapon to end her suffering, but a memory flashes: his mother, the pregnant woman from years ago. She had been the first victim. Blade lowers his weapon. Instead of killing the woman, he grabs her and carries her into the night. As police bullets chase him, they flee to a hidden safe house where his mentor, Abraham Whistler, waits. The old hunter studies the injured woman grimly, warning that she may soon turn into one of the creatures they hunt. Blade stares at the frightened doctor, unable to finish her off. Whistler steps in, noticing the name on her badge: Karen Johnson. He explains that there might still be a chance to slow the transformation. He prepares a brutal injection of garlic extract, a compound that burns like fire in the veins but can halt a vampire infection. Karen writhes in pain as the treatment begins. Far from the safe house, the council of elder vampires gathers. They speak in whispers about the disaster at the bloodbath party. Their leader declares that the culprit is Blade, the infamous Daywalker, a half-breed who hunts his own kind. The elders summon Deacon Frost, a young and ambitious leader of a lesser vampire house. He, too, is a half-blood, turned rather than born, and carries the stigma of it. The council blames Frost for drawing Blade's attention and endangering their secret world. For centuries, vampires have lived in the shadows, and the elders insist that is where they must stay. But Frost has no interest in hiding. He dreams of conquest, a world ruled by vampires with humanity enslaved or converted. He leaves the meeting with defiance, promising that change is coming. Back at the safe house, Blade visits his trusted weapons dealer, stocking up on fresh garlic essence and a higher dose of his own serum. A painful injection that suppresses his bloodlust. Meanwhile, Karen regains consciousness. She is still human. Exploring the room, she notices Blade's sword and reaches for it, only to recoil in shock as hidden spikes snap out, ready to punish any unauthorized touch. Blade returns as Whistler studies Karen's notes, suspecting she is close to uncovering something important about the vampire condition. The conversation unfolds while Blade injects himself with a stronger dose of serum, his body tensing against the agony. Karen listens in secret, but eventually the hunters confront her. Realizing they can no longer hide the truth, they reveal who they are and what they do, traveling from city to city, tracking and destroying vampires wherever they nest. Karen wants to deny it, but the memory of the burned corpse that refused to die forces her to accept reality. Whistler gives her a tour of their arsenal, silver weapons, garlic, and his newest invention, a powerful ultraviolet spotlight capable of reducing vampires to ash. Blade agrees to test it in the field soon. Whistler warns that the vampires will not forget her face, and from now on, she will never be truly safe. Before releasing her, they arm her with a small canister of garlic spray. As she leaves, Whistler gives one final piece of grim advice: if the hunger comes, it's better to own life than become a monster. Elsewhere, the vampire elder, Guano, finds Frost in the restricted archives. The young vampire is scanning ancient scrolls with modern computers, searching for secrets the elders have long guarded. Kitano slaps him across the face, furious that a half-blood would dare enter the domain of House Erebus. Frost refuses to explain his plans, only smirking as the elder storms off. In the quiet room, the computers continue to decode the forgotten texts, hinting at the dangerous path Frost has chosen. Blade drops Karen off at her apartment, giving her one last warning: stay alert. On the way up, she notices something odd. Several strangers in the elevator have identical tattoos on their necks. When she steps out, two of them follow. They trail her for a few steps, then vanish. Back inside her apartment, she barely has time to breathe before someone knocks. A police officer stands in the doorway, but something's off. His tone is threatening, and his eyes are cold. When he steps too close, Karen blasts him in the face with her garlic spray. It does nothing. Before panic can take hold, Blade steps into the room. The hunter reveals the truth: this man isn't a vampire. Not yet. He's a familiar, a human servant hoping to be turned. Blade beats the cop down and points to the tattoo on his neck, the same one Karen saw earlier. It's a mark. He belongs to Deacon Frost. Downstairs, they open the trunk of the cop's cruiser and find coolers full of donor blood. The pieces start to fall into place. But just as Blade tightens his grip, the familiar breaks free. With Karen holding him back and a crowd nearby, Blade hesitates. The servant escapes into the street. After a short argument, Karen makes a choice. She climbs into the car beside Blade. She's not going back. She knows it's safer with him and insists she won't stop searching for a cure. Later that night, they spot the familiar returning to his car. The chase leads them through the dark city, straight to a hidden vampire club. Guards stand outside the entrance. This place isn't just a nightclub, it's a crypt. Blade arms Karen with a pistol loaded with silver rounds and walks in like he owns the place. Inside, another party is in full swing, but the vibe is different. No dancing this time. Guests sit around tables listening to an electronic set performed by a DJ and two Asian singers. Near the bar, Blade spots the familiar. He pushes through the crowd and tackles him, sending nearby guards flying. The chase leads through the kitchen where Blade smashes his way through equipment and furniture, using the terrified man like a battering ram. He needs answers. Where's the hidden entrance? And once again, the vampires have hidden it in a freezer. Seems they have a taste for cold, confined spaces. Blade lets the familiar go and leads Karen into the hidden passage. They ride the elevator down into the archive, the same place Frost had been decrypting ancient vampire texts. As they begin searching through the data, the familiar returns to Frost's private penthouse. A party is underway, but the vampire leader stays glued to his computer. The last pages of a centuries-old prophecy are almost decoded. On screen, a strange circular structure appears, marked with symbols and empty spaces meant for people with specific signs on their bodies. The details remain a mystery, but the shape and markings hint at a ritual, something dangerous. The familiar breaks Frost's focus and tells him everything about Blade, about the woman, and how she was used as bait. For a moment, Frost says nothing. Then, without warning, he pounces and drains the man dry, tossing his body into the pool at the center of the room. Among the guests at the party is someone unexpected: Quinn, the same vampire Blade torched and mutilated earlier. Now, he serves as Frost's second-in-command. His missing hand is a reminder of their last encounter. Deacon Frost issues his next command: he wants the Daywalker alive. Deep in the vampire archives, Blade and Karen follow the stench to its source. Hunched before a glowing monitor sits Pearl, a grotesque archivist who looks more like a bloated monster than a man, his folds of pale flesh spilling over the chair. On screen, he is explaining the meaning of the decrypted diagram to Frost. The scheme is part of an ancient ritual. When Pearl sees Blade step out of the shadows, terror hits him so hard he lets out a panicked groan and even fumbles bodily in fear. He screams into the camera that the hunter is here to kill him. Frost doesn't flinch. He calmly tells Pearl to die with some dignity and cuts the feed. Blade and Karen move in, activating the ultraviolet spotlight. The beam scorches Pearl's skin, crisping it instantly. His squeals echo through the vault under the burning light. The archivist finally talks. He spills Frost's plan, an ancient ceremony meant to awaken the blood god, La Magra. To complete it, Frost needs 12 pure-blood vampires and something more, something he hasn't yet revealed. Blade seizes a data disk from the archive and orders Karen to watch Pearl. If the creature twitches, she is to fry him again. Moving deeper into the restricted section, Blade finds a locked door and decides to blow it open. Ignoring the archivist's panicked protests, Karen silences him with another brutal flash of UV light, leaving him charred but alive. The blast opens the vault, revealing the original scrolls. But as Blade steps inside, a young girl sitting on the floor draws his attention. He hesitates, and in a flash, she attacks, kicking him across the room and shattering a glass display. Other vampires pour in, led by Quinn, whose scarred face twists in triumph. The fight erupts fast, but luck turns against the hunter. A chain snaps around his neck, dragging him against a pillar. Karen is captured, too. Quinn struts forward, proudly showing off his regenerated hand, the same one Blade cut off in the hospital. The vampires crowd around, one of them daring to grab Blade's sword. The weapon's defensive spikes shoot out, severing the thief's hand instantly. But the onlookers barely care. It will grow back. Quinn savors the moment, driving 2 silver stakes into Blade's shoulder, mocking the hunter the way he himself had been humiliated during the Bloodbath massacre. The room bursts with laughter, but their victory is short-lived. In Blade's ear, a tiny earpiece crackles. Whistler is listening. Moments later, the old man storms the building. Limping but unstoppable, he unleashes a hail of gunfire, mowing down the vampire guards with ruthless precision. Blade and Karen seize the distraction, breaking free and diving through the blast hole Whistler carved open earlier. The trio races into a service tunnel leading to the city subway. As they flee, Whistler tosses a heavy explosive into the archive. The detonation rips through the chamber just as a subway train thunders past, cutting off their escape route. A flying fragment smashes into Whistler's face, but he presses on. Blade and Karen leap into the tunnel, dodging between the roaring trains. In a brutal chase through the dark, the hunters and vampires battle between the tracks. One by one, the creatures fall. Quinn loses another hand, then slams headfirst into the side of a moving train, counting the cars with his skull. Blade and Karen grab hold of the last car of a speeding train, vanishing into the night as the surviving vampires are left behind. Back in the safety of the hideout, Blade injects himself with another dose of serum. He explains to Karen that he isn't a full vampire, but something different, something in between. His words are short, but his eyes reveal the weight he carries. Later, Whistler continues the story, filling in the pieces. He tells Karen that he first met Blade when the boy was only 13, wandering the streets and feeding on the blood of vagrants. Whistler nearly killed him, mistaking him for a vampire until he realized the truth. Blade's mother had been bitten during the final days of her pregnancy. She died giving birth, and the attack altered her child's genes. The result was a half-breed unlike any other, a Daywalker. Blade carries the strength and speed of a vampire but can walk in sunlight and withstand silver. His curse is the thirst, a hunger that never truly fades. Lately, the serum buys him only brief moments of relief. Whistler's own past is just as tragic. He confides that a vampire once slaughtered his entire family, a guest he had foolishly welcomed into his home. That day, he swore to hunt the creatures until his last breath. He warns that something big is coming in the vampire world, and all signs point to Deacon Frost. When Karen steps into Blade's room, she says she finally understands who he is. Blade answers quietly that she can't know everything. He's not human, not really. She tries to convince him otherwise, but he admits his mission has always been personal. Since the beginning, he has been hunting the monster who attacked his mother and made him this way. Meanwhile, at Frost's penthouse, Quinn returns in disgrace. His master's girlfriend mocks him, biting into his freshly regenerated stump for fun. Frost himself reminds Quinn that Blade must be captured alive. Soon after, the vampires carry out a brutal display. At sunrise, a hooded prisoner is dragged to a desolate shoreline. When the bag is removed, the elders of House Erebus see the face of Guano, the old clan leader. Frost rips the fangs from his mouth with pliers, strips him bare, and forces him to kneel facing the dawn. The first rays of sunlight set him ablaze. Moments later, his body bursts apart, scattering ashes across the sand. Hand in hand with his lover, Frost watches the execution like a coronation. At the next council meeting, Frost arrives with Gitano's fangs, claiming his seat at the head of the table. He demands 12 volunteers for a special ritual, the final step toward his plan to awaken La Magra. Back at the hideout, Blade and Whistler study the spoils from the archives. The hunter presents a fragment of the scroll in the stolen data disk. While Whistler promises to decode Frost's plan, Karen, now more determined than ever, sets up her medical equipment. She has developed a new compound, one that makes a vampire's blood boil on contact. A test under the microscope ends explosively, shattering the glass. While drawing Blade's blood for further study, Karen learns another truth: Whistler is dying of cancer. Even with his tough exterior, the old hunter's time is running out. Later, when Karen examines the healing bite on her neck, Whistler finds her. He warns that she looks pale, and if the infection takes hold, she might turn in a day or two. She asks him not to bury her before it's certain. Blade leaves to restock his serum. In the city streets, he finally comes face to face with Deacon Frost. In broad daylight, Deacon Frost finally steps into the open, his skin coated in thick sunscreen. One hand grips the wrist of a small Asian girl, his hostage. He approaches Blade calmly, eager to meet the Daywalker face to face. Frost speaks with cold arrogance, claiming that humans are nothing but cattle. Trembling at the sight of hunters like Blade, he calls vampires the superior race destined to rule the earth. Blade doesn't flinch. He looks over the symbols of the ritual Frost is planning and dismisses him as nothing more than a petty pretender. With a smirk, Frost shoves the terrified girl into traffic and sprints away. Blade lunges forward, snatching her out of the path of an oncoming bus. The child doesn't say a word, only bolts into the crowd and vanishes. While the hunter confronts Frost on the streets, Karen and Whistler continue testing her experimental serum in the hideout. She believes the formula could help cure newly turned vampires and maybe even suppress Blade's hunger for good. But before they can finish, the safe house comes under attack. Vampires swarm in, and although the pair manages to kill several, they are ultimately captured. When Blade returns, he finds the place ransacked. Karen is gone. In the dim light, a blood-soaked sheet covers Whistler, who clings to life just long enough to leave a message. He explains that Frost has taken Karen and plans to trigger a vampire apocalypse that will erase humanity from the earth. The old man finally understands the translation. Blade himself is the key to summoning La Magra, which is why they need him alive. Whistler begs Blade to end his life before the infection turns him. The hunter resists, but in the end, he places the loaded pistol in his mentor's hand and walks away. A gunshot echoes through the empty warehouse. Blade returns to his room, watching Frost's taunting video invitation, summoning him to the Edgewood Tower. Karen, now in Frost's clutches, faces the vampire leader directly. He toys with her, hinting that Blade must have claimed her already, then offers her a choice: transformation or death. She responds with defiance, insisting she'll survive a bite and cure herself. Frost laughs at her confidence, calling her a fool. When she calls him tainted, not a true evolution of the species, his calm cracks. He rants about La Magra, the blood god, and the coming apocalypse that no serum could ever stop. Moments later, the sound of engines and gunfire shatters the air. Blade arrives. He loads silver stakes, forged bullets, and syringes filled with Karen's lethal serum. The lobby erupts into chaos as alarms echo through the tower. Frost retreats to his penthouse. Blade pushes higher, only to face two elite vampire guards waiting at the top floors, ready for the final showdown. Blade faces the elite vampire guards on the upper floors, testing Karen's new injectable weapon. The effect is instant and devastating. One hit, and the creatures burst into violent sprays of blood, leaving nothing but a red mist behind. With the path clear, Blade pushes forward and enters a bright white hall. At the center, a laptop loops Frost's intricate plan for summoning the blood god, La Magra. Then, from the shadows, a mechanical bed slides open. On it lies a woman he never expected to see, his mother, alive, healthy, and smiling. She explains that Frost was the one who bit her and that she has been with him ever since. The revelation stuns Blade, leaving him vulnerable. Vampires strike from all sides, beating him mercilessly with electric batons until his body goes limp. He and Karen are thrown into the back of a truck, chained and battered as the convoy heads toward the ritual site. During the ride, Karen whispers that she might have a cure for vampirism but warns it would also strip Blade of all his powers. At the temple, the prisoners are dragged out and clubbed toward the center of a massive underground chamber. The vampire council members, now Frost's captives, are positioned around the room. Quinn knocks Blade to his knees, and the hunter trembles with thirst, barely hearing the words of his enemies. Frost toys with Blade's weapons, spinning the sword and examining the syringes. Mistaking the vials of boiling blood serum for the Daywalker's injections, he casually tosses them aside. Karen is hurled into a dark pit beneath the temple, where a half-feral, blind vampire crawls toward her. In the twisted figure, she recognizes her old co-worker from the hospital, now nothing more than a monster. He fumbles to speak, but she fights back, smashing him down with a heavy bone before climbing out of the underground lair to search for Blade. Meanwhile, the hunter's cage awaits. Blade is locked into a towering device that drains his blood like a living juicer. His mother closes the chamber with a soft hiss. She asks for his forgiveness, calling him by his human name, Eric, before confessing that she long ago surrendered to the hunger. The ritual begins. Around the hall, the vampire elders are placed in a perfect circle. Channels in the walls fill with Blade's blood, connecting to carved patterns in the stone. Sparks of dark energy ripple through the temple. By the time Karen reaches him and forces the chamber open, the process is already underway. Blade collapses to the floor, weak and barely conscious. Karen makes a desperate choice. She tells him to drink from her to take the strength he needs. He refuses, then realizes there is no other way. The Daywalker sinks his fangs into her neck, and power surges back into his body. Above, droplets of blood begin to fall onto the foreheads of the council members. Frost steps into the center of the ritual circle, lifting his arms as the final drop lands. Lightning strikes through the chamber, and the transformation begins. Blade's mother lunges at him, furious that he has escaped. The battle for survival is about to erupt. Karen fights to disrupt the ritual, firing a shotgun that sends one of Frost's guards plummeting into the abyss. At the same time, Blade, now fully powered, ends his mother's cursed existence with one decisive strike. The sacrificed vampire elders scream as their skeleton-like spirits rip free from their bodies and surge into Deacon Frost, completing his transformation into the living vessel of Lagra. Fueled by rage, Blade charges across the blood-soaked chamber to face the newborn Dark God. His first target is Quinn, and the Daywalker takes him down with relentless precision, reclaiming his sunglasses as he cuts through the remaining vampires with brutal efficiency. Karen joins the chaos, soaking Frost's lover in garlic extract. The chemical reaction is so violent that the vampire's head erupts in a gory explosion. At last, the hunter confronts Frost. Their swords clash in an intense, echoing battle. Blade lands a perfect strike, slicing the vampire lord clean in half, but the pieces rejoin instantly. Lamagra's regeneration is unstoppable, mocking the strength of the legendary sword. Then Blade remembers the vials, Karen's boiling blood serum. He flings his sword, skewering the syringes across the room. At first, it seems like a miss until the sword's hidden mechanism snaps open, launching the vials straight into Blade's hands. With lightning speed, he drives multiple injectors into Frost's body. The vampire god convulses, his flesh bubbling as the formula does its work. A surge of pressure tears through him, and the dark deity explodes in a shower of blood and ash. The ritual chamber falls silent. Blade and Karen escape to the rooftop, watching the city lights burn against the night. She vows to keep working on a cure for vampirism, but Blade refuses the idea of peace. He asks only for more serum to keep the thirst at bay. In the final scene, the Daywalker appears in Moscow, confronting another vampire in the snow, reminding the world that his war is far from over. Thus, we reach the end of this movie. Thanks for watching. If you like the movie, support us. Don't forget to subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next movie. Goodbye.